Queen Camilla, panicking after Carole Middleton, released documents exposing his darkest side in Birmingham Palace. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. In the weeks before the documents first surfaced, Birmingham Palace appeared to the casual observer as a bastion of order and quiet dignity. Its sprawling gardens gleamed under the morning sun, fountains trickled their familiar, soothing rhythms, and the corridors echoed with the soft, measured steps of staff performing their routines. On the surface, life moved at its usual ceremonious pace, a rhythm practiced over decades, the kind of life that outsiders only glimpsed in carefully curated photographs and state events. But beneath that veneer of serenity, tensions had begun to stir. Camilla, who had long understood the dualities of royal life, the public face and the private reality, was feeling an unfamiliar unease. It started with subtle incidents, a hushed conversation in the hallway that ended abruptly when she entered, an aide's nervous glance that lingered just a fraction too long, and the sudden appearance of letters that seemed ordinary but carried an uncharacteristic sense of urgency. These were small, almost imperceptible signs. Yet they hinted at something larger, a shift in the balance of power and perception that Camilla could not ignore. Even as the palace maintained its outward calm, Camilla's mind was restless. She knew the history of leaks, of scandals that had emerged seemingly out of nowhere, shaking even the most meticulously managed reputations. In her years as a senior member of the royal family, she had learned that appearances were everything. A single misstep, a poorly timed comment, or even the implication of impropriety could ripple outward, magnified by the press, social media, and public speculation. Every gesture mattered, every expression carried weight, and every interaction had the potential to be dissected by those looking for evidence of weakness. The calm before the storm, Camilla understood, was the most dangerous of all. It lulled those who were confident into a false sense of security, masking the undercurrents that could quickly become a torrent. And as she moved through the palace, greeting staff and attending to official duties with her usual poise, she could feel those undercurrents, subtle but undeniable, pulling at the edges of her carefully controlled world. One morning, as sunlight poured through the tall windows of her private chambers, Camilla reviewed a series of routine correspondence. Most of it was mundane event invitations, ceremonial notices, and updates on charitable activities. But amid the papers, one envelope stood out, its edges crisp, the handwriting familiar yet formal. It bore no immediate indication of urgency, but the contents, brief, cryptic, and alarming, hinted at information that could unsettle even the most composed members of the royal household. Camilla placed the envelope aside, telling herself it was probably nothing, yet a nagging feeling in her chest refused to dissipate. She had learned to trust those instincts honed over years of navigating the intricate social and political landscapes of royal life. That feeling, that subtle prickling of unease, would soon prove to be prophetic. The palace staff, meanwhile, carried out their duties with mechanical precision, unaware of the storm looming on the horizon. From the kitchen staff preparing breakfast to the housekeepers tending to the rooms to the security personnel monitoring the estate's perimeter, everyone played a role in maintaining the illusion of normally, but Camilla sensed that even they were beginning to feel the tension. Conversations that once flowed freely had become guarded. Smiles were tighter, laughter more measured. In an environment where appearances were everything, the shift was palpable. During these weeks of relative calm, Camilla reflected on her relationships within the palace and beyond. Alliances, both personal and political, had always been central to her survival and influence. She had cultivated connections carefully, balancing diplomacy with subtle assertiveness, ensuring that her position remained unassailable. But alliances are only as strong as the trust that underpins them, and trust, she knew, is fragile. In a world where ambition and reputation can clash violently, even a single act of betrayal or the mere threat of one can unravel years of careful planning. It was during one of these reflective moments that she first considered Carole Middleton in a new light. The mother of the future heir's wife had always been present in the periphery of royal life at public events, charitable functions, and family gatherings. Polite, articulate, and socially adept, Carole had managed to maintain a careful balance between involvement and distance. But beneath the surface of cordial, Camilla sensed a shrewdness, a strategic mind capable of significant influence. It was the type of mind that could, given the right motivation, disrupt the equilibrium of the palace with precision. In the calm before the storm, the palace seemed to operate in two separate realities, one of outward dignity and ceremonial order, the other of quiet tension and anticipation. Camilla moved between them with practiced grace, aware that every action was being observed and potentially judged. Meetings with advisors were conducted with meticulous attention to detail, and public appearances were choreographed to project stability and composure. Yet the private moments, those unseen by the public eye, were charged with apprehension. Every phone call, every message, every footstep carried potential significance. As days passed, the sense of impending disruption grew. Camilla noticed subtle shifts in behavior among the palace staff. Messages were delivered with hesitancy, eyes darted toward her in moments of pause, and conversations halted when she approached. Even routine protocols, which had long been second nature, were now approached with caution, as if the palace itself were aware that something monumental was about to occur. Camilla began to review her own actions, retracing decisions, interactions, and statements, analyzing them for potential vulnerabilities. She considered every meeting with Carole Middleton, every encounter with media figures, and every public appearance. Were there moments that could now be interpreted in ways she had not anticipated? Could a casual remark or a private gesture be misrepresented, used as evidence against her? The weight of these questions pressed heavily upon her, magnifying the anxiety that had been quietly growing beneath the surface. Amid this growing unease, there were moments of reflection and even self-doubt. Camilla considered the nature of power and reputation, and how quickly both can shift under the influence of unexpected forces. She thought about the monarchy's history of crises, of scandals that had emerged from both within and outside the family, and how each had left indelible marks on those involved. She realized that even her own careful navigation of royal life could not guarantee immunity from exposure, and that the coming storm, whatever its form, would test her resolve in ways she had not yet imagined. In these moments, the palace itself seemed to take on a symbolic weight. The opulent rooms, gilded frames, and sweeping staircases were not just architectural features. They were witnesses to decades of history, power, and secrecy. Each corridor, each chamber had seen triumphs and controversies, alliances forged and broken. And now they were poised to witness another chapter, one that would challenge Camilla personally, professionally, and emotionally. The calm before the storm, Camilla realized, was the most deceptive and dangerous part of any crisis. It offered no warning beyond subtle hints, no clear indication of timing, no certainty of outcome. It required patience, vigilance, and mental fortitude to navigate successfully. And yet, even as she prepared for the unknown, the reality remained that some forces were beyond control. As she moved through the palace gardens that morning, the dew glistening on the perfectly manicured lawns, Camilla felt the tension coiling tighter within her. She understood that events were moving toward a breaking point, that the delicate equilibrium of her world was about to be challenged, and that the coming revelations would demand a level of composure and strategic thinking unmatched by anything she had previously faced. The calm of Birmingham Palace, with its ordered routines and ceremonial grace, would soon give way to chaos. And in that chaos, Queen Camilla would be forced to confront the full weight of exposure, the power of secrets revealed, and the consequences of missteps in a world where perception is as vital as truth itself. The storm was coming, and there was no turning back. In any story of power, influence, and revelation, understanding the motivations of those behind the scenes is often as important as the events themselves. And payments routed through entities with foreign addresses, the woman at the center of the storm, Carole Middleton, was as calculated and strategic as she was underestimated. To outsiders, she may have seemed like a private, reserved figure, a mother supporting her family from the sidelines, never seeking the spotlight. But history has shown that those who operate quietly, who observe meticulously and act decisively, often wield the most lasting influence. Carole's rise to prominence, while not bound to titles or formal positions, was rooted in a keen understanding of social dynamics, perception, and timing. Over the years, she had carefully navigated the complex intersections of public visibility, media narratives, and personal discretion. Every public appearance, every family decision, every interaction with the royal circle was measured, intentional, and strategic. It was a skill honed over decades, one that would soon prove crucial in her decision to release the documents that would rattle Birmingham Palace. At the heart of her motivation was a mixture of loyalty, protection, and ambition. Carole had always been fiercely protective of her family, especially her daughter, whose life was now intertwined with the monarchy. To outsiders, these instincts might have appeared as the simple concerns of a mother wanting the best for her child. But beneath that protective veneer was a calculated understanding of leverage. Knowledge once obtained could be a powerful tool, and timing could amplify its effect exponentially. Carole understood that information is not merely power in theory. It becomes power in practice when released at the precise moment that maximizes its impact. But why the documents, and why now? To answer that, one must consider the circumstances surrounding the palace at that time. Birmingham Palace was a symbol of tradition, authority, and controlled image management. Its halls had seen decades of careful navigation of scandals, rumors, and internal disputes. Yet, even within these walls of apparent stability, fissures existed. Camilla's rise to prominence had been met with resistance, skepticism, and at times quiet disapproval from certain quarters of the royal circle. These dynamics created vulnerabilities, weak points that someone observant, patient, and strategically minded could exploit. Carole, acutely aware of these vulnerabilities, recognized an opportunity. The documents she had obtained contained information that could illuminate patterns of behavior, inconsistencies, or private decisions that, if revealed, would challenge the narrative carefully cultivated by Camilla and her team. These documents were not reckless gossip. They were meticulously compiled, credible, and capable of surviving scrutiny in a way that rumors never could. Releasing them was not a simple act of defiance. It was a strategic move designed to shift perception, provoke accountability, and, in Carole's mind, protect her family from potential harm or misrepresentation. Timing was everything. The leak was executed when Camilla's influence was at a peak, yet the palace was navigating other pressures: public scrutiny over political engagements, media focus on recent charitable initiatives, and ongoing negotiations over familial roles within the monarchy. By releasing the documents at this juncture, Carole ensured that the revelation would resonate, that it could not be easily dismissed, and that it would demand attention from all corners of the public sphere. In short, the timing maximized the impact while minimizing the opportunity for immediate suppression. Equally important was Carole's understanding of perception. In the royal world, how an event is framed is often more consequential than the event itself. By carefully selecting what to release, how to release it, and when, she controlled not just the narrative, but the context in which it would be received. This was not about sensationalism, it was about precision. Each document, each excerpt, each detail was chosen with the awareness that it could influence public opinion, media framing, and internal palace dynamics. Carole had become in essence both strategist and storyteller, crafting a narrative that would be nearly impossible to ignore. But motivation is rarely purely strategic. There was also a deeply human component to Carole's actions, a desire to assert agency in a world where her family's lives were subject to scrutiny, control, and influence by forces outside their control. In the gilded halls of the monarchy, decisions are often made for appearances rather than authenticity. Carole, who had spent years observing, protecting, and navigating these dynamics, may have viewed the documents as a necessary intervention, a way to assert truth, clarify misconceptions, and protect those she loved from unseen manipulation or misrepresentation. The personal stakes for Carole were immense. By stepping into this arena, she risked public backlash, accusations of overreach, and potential strain on relationships within the royal circle. She was acutely aware that actions of this magnitude carry consequences, that power must be exercised with both caution and resolve. Yet, in her calculations, the benefits outweighed the risks. She recognized that allowing the palace's narrative to go unchallenged could perpetuate misunderstandings, weaken her family's position, and ultimately have long-term repercussions that could not be undone. Equally revealing is the psychological dimension of Carole's strategy. Understanding human behavior, particularly the reactions of those in positions of power, was central to her approach. Camilla, for all her composure and experience, was human, a combination of pride, ambition, and vulnerability. By introducing information in a controlled yet provocative manner, Carole could elicit a reaction, measure it, and potentially shape subsequent decisions within the palace. It was a calculated move designed not just to inform the public, but to influence the internal dynamics of the royal household itself. Furthermore, Carole's decision cannot be understood without acknowledging the broader cultural and societal pressures surrounding the monarchy. In an era of relentless media scrutiny, social media amplification, and public engagement, the monarchy operates under a microscope unlike any institution in history. Every action, perceived slight or inconsistency, can be magnified, dissected, and debated. Carole's timing reflected an acute awareness of this environment. She understood that by releasing the documents when public attention was high, she could ensure that the revelations would not simply be fleeting whispers, but enduring points of discussion, analysis, and reflection. Her motivation was also rooted in the belief that transparency, even when uncomfortable, could yield long-term stability. By exposing behaviors, decisions, or information that had previously been shielded, Carole may have intended to prevent future misunderstandings, reduce the power of rumor, and create a more informed public dialogue. In her mind, confrontation, even one as dramatic as releasing sensitive documents, could serve as a catalyst for clarity, accountability, and protection of her family's interests. Even so, Carole was not acting recklessly. The release of such documents required meticulous preparation, ensuring that what was disclosed could withstand scrutiny, that it was accurate, and that it would not be easily dismissed as speculation. This level of preparation demonstrates a strategic mind at work, someone capable of navigating complex social, political, and emotional landscapes with both precision and foresight. It was a move that demanded courage, intelligence, and a deep understanding of human behavior, particularly that of the person she sought to challenge, Queen Camilla. Perhaps most importantly, Carole's actions reveal a profound understanding of timing and leverage. She recognized that the release of the documents would generate anxiety, uncertainty, and defensive reactions within the palace. By creating a scenario in which Camilla's composure and strategic skill were tested, Carole not only ensured that the information would be taken seriously, but also subtly shifted the balance of power. In moments of crisis, those who hold knowledge can often shape outcomes more effectively than those with titles or formal authority. Finally, Carole's motivations were inseparable from her identity as a mother, a strategist, and a woman navigating a world defined by both scrutiny and expectation. Her actions were not merely reactive, they were proactive, shaped by years of observation, understanding, and anticipation. In orchestrating the release of the documents, she demonstrated an acute awareness of human nature, institutional dynamics, and the enduring consequences of revelation. She understood that in the theater of royal power, perception is as vital as reality, and that timing, precision, and courage can define history as decisively as wealth, title, or influence. In the end, Carole Middleton's motivations were complex, layered, and deeply human. They combined strategy, protection, ambition, and the instinct to act decisively in the face of uncertainty. By understanding her perspective, one can begin to grasp why Birmingham Palace, despite its grandeur, its history, and its protocols, was suddenly vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test the resolve, composure, and strategic acumen of Queen Camilla herself. The day the documents first emerged, Birmingham Palace felt less like a royal residence and more like a pressure cooker, every room humming with the tension of secrets poised to erupt. The documents themselves had been in circulation long before the public or even the palace staff knew of their existence. Carefully compiled, meticulously maintained, and deeply revealing, they represented the culmination of months, perhaps years, of observation, record-keeping, and strategic foresight. In the hands of Carole Middleton, they became a catalyst capable of shaking the foundations of the palace itself. No one remembers the exact moment when the first hint of their presence surfaced. Some claim it began with a subtle inquiry from a trusted aide. Others insist it was a slip during a casual conversation that hinted at knowledge far beyond ordinary curiosity. Whatever the spark, it ignited a chain reaction that would ripple through the corridors, offices, and private chambers of Birmingham Palace. Camilla, always keenly aware of nuance and implication, immediately sensed that this was no ordinary leak. Something far more significant had entered the palace's orbit, something that demanded attention, discretion, and above all, careful strategic thinking. The contents of the documents were, by all accounts, incendiary. They detailed interactions, decisions, and private communications that had been carefully shielded from the public eye. Yet, these were not mere anecdotes or unverified claims. They were records corroborated in part by witnesses, correspondences, and internal memos. In other words, the information was credible, structured, and undeniable. For Camilla, the realization was immediate and visceral. The palace, for all its history and authority, was suddenly exposed to scrutiny in a way that could not be controlled simply through public statements or carefully crafted appearances. The arrival of the documents set off an immediate internal response. Camilla's closest aides convened emergency meetings. Papers were reviewed and catalogued, and senior staff were briefed on the potential implications. The sense of urgency was palpable. Every decision mattered, and the wrong reaction could magnify the scandal exponentially. But even as the palace mobilized its resources, the documents remained a force beyond their immediate control. Each page, each detail carried weight, and each revelation posed a new challenge.